didn't know I was going to say anything. I thought I should give you a bit of context. I met Gordo about 2 years ago at the Mustard Seed, maybe a little longer than that now. And I've noticed two things about Gordo. First of all, I want to share a couple of things about Gordo. Can you hear me now? Okay. Gordo is one of the most generous in spirit fellows, guys that I've ever met. Yes, he gives materially, but more than that, Gordo gives his life away. And I've seen that a number of times. The second thing that I noticed about Gordo when I met him was simply this. If you ask Gordo a question, you need to be prepared for the answer. And by that I mean, Gordo has the gift, and I mean this, it's a gift of telling the truth. He tells you as it is, and he's usually right on. So Gordo, I just want you to know that at First Baptist, we appreciate you for a number of things, but especially this generous spirit that you have, and that indeed you are a truth teller, and you hold many of us accountable, and we love you.
Thank you.
Greg.
Am I too loud? You okay? I felt welcome into this family, and it's really cool to be here. I'm probably going to get emotional in this, just for what he said. But my testimony, the only way I can do it is tell you what my life was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was born into a military family and traveled a lot. By the time I was, going into grade 10, I had lived in 5 provinces. I had been to 7 different schools and really had no roots set down. And my family was what you'd call dysfunctional. My father couldn't control his anger, and wow. For lack of better ways, I used to get beat a lot. And there's a few events that happened in my life that kind of changed the course of it. And there was a event when I was 12 years old. I went to a hockey game. Some of you might remember the old Calgary Centennials. Well, I went to those games. It's like the Royals now. And my father, me and my brother and my dad and 2 of my dad's friends went. And my dad and his friends sat somewhere. Me and my brother got cheap seats. And I didn't know where my dad was at in the arena. And my brother took off. And I didn't know how to find my dad, but I had to be back at this, find my dad by a certain time. And there I was, the last third period, and like 10 minutes left, and I don't know where to go. And I'm looking in this arena up every row. I couldn't find him, and it wasn't going to turn out good. Then an usher came up to me and said, "Hey, we'll just go down and page him." And I said, "No, don't do that." Well, they did. My dad came and got me, and the minute he walked in that room, he was upset, in the ride home. Not a word was spoken. When we got home, he grabbed me. I ended up getting thrown through the wall. And I couldn't understand why. Ended up peeing my pants. I was so scared. Went up and hid behind my dresser. And I couldn't understand why that happened. And I came to the conclusion that it had to stop. So that night, when my dad went to sleep, went downstairs and I got a shotgun. And I woke him up with the stuff to his head, and I said, "You're never touching me again. And this is how easy it would be to kill you." And I didn't pull the trigger, but that was a turning point in my life with my family. It got worse. I never got touched again, but that's when you really find out the power of mental abuse, because my dad could look at me and it was like I got beat up. It didn't matter. It was just, he owned me. And everything in my life would measure up to what he wanted out of me, and I wasn't living my life. That's when I started sampling with drugs. 12 years old, started smoking pot, started drinking. By the time I was 14, it was a regular occurrence in my life, and the people I started hanging out with, there was a guy that, we all know that one family that the parents let you sit and drink at their house because they think it's safe if he's in my house, I was there at a New Year's Eve party, and I needed to use the washroom, and in military quarters or PMQ housing, one bathroom. I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm knocking on the door, and no one's answering. So I kicked the door, and my friend's mother was dead in the tub. She had overdosed on heroin, and I didn't know nothing about heroin, and at that time, it was a New Year's Eve party, and we had to get the police and everyone to come. We got the kids out of the house without anyone really knowing, but just something you shouldn't see at an early age. And then when it was the military, and if you've ever been around the military, they lined us up and they said, she died of heart failure. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm saying, dude, I seen that, that's not heart failure. And he looked at me and he said, if you say anything different, your father's career is gonna be affected. And at that point in my life, any form of authority, I didn't give him any value. These were supposed to be police and all that, and it didn't matter about my friend's parents. So I kind of rebelled at that point, and my friend was moved to the other side of the country within 5 days. It was swept under the rug, and so here I was left that, don't trust anybody, and whatever you do, don't get beat again. So I started experimenting and doing drugs, and it just escalated. And there was two things in my life that I could find peace in: music, and I played hockey. And I was good at hockey. I was able to play ahead of my age, and when I was 15, I started playing with a junior B team, and then I'm underage, and you'd go on these trips. I was a pickup, but you go for 2 or 3 days, and in my head, I was gonna play that team next year because I'd be gone from my home a lot, and then if I played hockey, if my name got in the paper or whatever like that, because it did, my father would, it would make him happy. So here I was playing hockey, but I wasn't playing to make the team, I was playing to get away from home. And it had escalated, and then on that team, I was 15, and the next year I played full-time at 16, with the regular age of 17, 18, 19, and a couple of 20-year-olds into junior age. And they're drinking, and I'm on a bus, and if I get a couple goals, here, have a beer. Here, have a beer. And it was accepted. And whatever happened on the bus stayed on the bus, And I loved hockey, but I used it as a tool to get away and escape. And the same thing with music. And it kept my father happy. And I progressed to the point, by the time I was 18, I was an alcoholic. I was a guy playing a sport like a organ grinder's monkey to get a beer at the end. If I got a hat trick, beer, and and that became, it was just, looking back, it was toxic, but my parents were happy, the coaches are happy, you get your name in the paper, it's all, everyone perceives something's great, but there's still this broken kid in there. And I played hockey, and at the same time, music was the same thing. I learned to escape in that. My father hated music, and I did so well with hockey, I got an opportunity to go to Fairbanks, Alaska for NCAA college hockey, but there was no way I was going to school anymore. There's no way I was doing that. And I kept playing hockey, but I just put it on the back bench and I focused on music. And then I ended up working in the music industry. I started as disc jockeying at like 16 too. And I progressed to, by the time I was 18, I was starting to work with bands like, April Wine, like touring acts that were at a top-notch level. I was just a day laborer. And then they seemed to like me, and I had an aptitude for it. And one day they just said, have you ever thought of going on tour? And I said, well, yeah. And he says, well, we need a guy on the tour, and we leave tonight. What do you think? And I was 18, 19 area, right in there, and I said, yeah, I'll go. And I was still living at my parents', and I basically went home, and I grabbed a comb, made sure my dad went, but that was the kind of guy, you have a hanky, you have your comb, like he had this military kind of regiment, and I just looked at him and said, I got my comb, I'm taking off, I'll see you when I see you. And I went in the music industry, but then it turned out to be, in the music industry, alcohol is everywhere, drugs are everywhere. And it was an industry that, it didn't matter what you did, as long as you could do your job. Like, if you could drink and do it, they didn't seem to care. And so it progressed. And then, you know, the drinking, then I started picking up cocaine at a regular basis. And, you know, by the time I'm 21, 22, I was an addict. You know, I had this problem, but I had a surreal life. Like, everyone thought, hey, that's cool, he's doing this and he's doing that. But I wasn't living at all. I was basically, my life was a charade, right? And I had progressed for quite a while. I started working at a higher level. I toured with a couple of bands that had the #1 album in the world. And then I went on a tour with a band called Platinum Blonde. You may have heard about it, and it was a drug crazed. I'd stayed up 28 days on that tour with very little sleep, and I had to get out of there. It was going to be the end of me, and so I made arrangements for me to get off the tour. I had a friend in Vancouver. I was going to fly back to Vancouver. He was going to fly out and finish the tour. I phoned the tour 4 or 5 days later to find out that my friend had overdosed and died on that tour. And second dead person that had been involved and somehow thought it was my fault. And you own that. So I stepped back from music, and you know, I played a little bit of hockey, but I just went through it. And by that point, I was an addict, and that's what I became. And I could always somewhat function. I could run companies, and I was blessed to get great jobs and make financial gains. But this unchecked emptiness in my soul, it just grew and grew and grew to the point hey, they're playing my song. You ever get the sudden urge to run? Well, there I was, you know, I'm not going to glorify the years of drugs because there's nothing to glorify in there, but I can say with all faith that anything you could imagine someone did in drugs, I've been involved with it, selling, hurting, you name it, and that's what I'm going to give the light of that, and that's it. But I had gotten to the point that never wanted that life. No one in addiction says, when I get older, this is going to be a great career choice. There's always a backstory and all that. I had been to, by the time I was 45, that journey just went up and down, but I'd been in treatment 9 times. That's the equivalent of 3 years of my life trying to clean up. I had been in a mental institution by that point for about a year of my life, in certain period, like months and months, or you know, different stays. But I was at wit's end, and in fact I was suicidal, and I had nowhere to go. I pushed everybody away from my life. No family, lost my kids, weren't, you know, no contact. And all I knew is I could go to the Eric Martin, the mental institution, and I went there, and they knew me. I'd been there a bunch, and they give you a test when you go in, and my urine was tested positive for drugs. And it's like, my attitude is, well, you know, I'm an addict, what do you think? You know, but anyway, their policy is, you got drugs in your system, there's nothing we can do to help you. Now, the nurse in there said to me, just stay the night, we'll leave you in here. There's like a pre-room, you're not into the ward, but you're waiting. And they let me stay the night, and she said stay all day, but I'd probably have to go by noon. And I was lost. I sat and stared straight ahead for hours, didn't know what I'd do, I was scared. Then out of the blue, a voice said, hey, would you go to a treatment center? Didn't turn around and said, I'll go anywhere. He says, it's a Christian treatment center. I said, dude, I'll go anywhere. And now, I've been in treatment 9 times. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have no funds and all that. It takes up to months and stuff. And that was 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. By 4 o'clock, every door had been opened, and all the tests I had been, funding was covered. I was accepted, and I was going to be, I had to get till next Wednesday to get there. That's when the ride was there, but I had nowhere to go. So now I hadn't seen my parents for a couple years, and I told my mom, and I said, hey, look, I'm going to treatment, but I really need a sober place where I can stay, because if I'm going to be on the streets for 3-4 more days, the chances of me staying sober are really low. And, you know, it was just not safe. And the relationship with my father had never really been healed. But my mom said, it's okay, he's in the hospital, so come on home. So I went to, my mom picked me up and went home. And my dad was not well. He had COPD and all the repercussions from that. And he was on his last legs. So, and that was Friday when I went home. Saturday, I found the courage that I'd go to the hospital, and I got to his room, but I couldn't bridge the doorway. I sat there for hours, and I couldn't go in. And eventually I just went home, but the buses were shut down, so I had to walk from Royal Jubilee to Wilkinson Road, which took forever. And in my head, I figured my mom's going to think, wait, he's late, he's out doing dope, and this stuff going on. I got home, my mom was super cool, didn't say nothing. I told her what happened. The next morning, the phone rings, and we're told, come down to the hospital. And my dad wasn't doing well. And my mom goes in, and she says, Jim, Gordy's here, and he's going to treatment. And 10 minutes later, my dad died. And I thought it was my fault again. And I said to my mom, hey, I better stay back and help you. And my mom never cussed or swore. And she looked at me, pointed, you're going to that effing treatment center. Can't you see that he died because he found peace, that you're going to make it? And I held on to that. And I went to this treatment center. And it was a Christian treatment center. It was called Miracle Valley. It was over in Mission. And I was fortunate that I had a counselor who was a street-level Christian. Like, he was walking East Hastings. Like, I couldn't lie to him. Most people, I could tell them whatever they needed to hear, and they'd leave me alone. Well, this guy would call me on it, and it was a blessing. And then he said to me, what you need is you need God. And at that point, I said, okay, let's have a discussion or debate. And I thought I was well learned in that. And what I only knew was the negative things you see on TV about what priests have done, and you can fill in the blanks in that. So I went and we had this debate, and it was like not an argument but a debate. But if you're beating me, I'm going to admit it and say you got me. Well, everything I said, he said in the most loving way, but he basically kicked my butt, and I handed it to him. So it opened up my eyes that maybe I need to look a little different. And two things he said to me, and he said to me, like, you've been trying everything under the sun to get well. Why don't you look beyond? And let's stop. And I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know what God was, but he was there to answer questions. And then he said another thing was, if you owned a $100,000 BMW and it broke down or wasn't working right, would you take it to the manufacturer? Would you lift that hood and do it yourself? And I would take it to the manufacturer. And he says, well, if you're broken, why do you try to fix it yourself? And I liked cars, and that punched me in the head so hard that, okay, maybe I need to find out who my maker was. And it started a journey. And at that point in my life, I had dropped music right out of my life. Like, it was just too much pain. And I'm in a treatment center, and they have bands coming all the time, and there were bands that went to strictly prisons and treatment centers. They were serving, and I didn't know what it was, and I really didn't even know what Christian music was. But one day, it was a Sunday, a guy started playing a guitar down in the smoke area. I went down and I started banging my hands on the wood, and this crowd started to gather around, and it was really a good time, and a real good time I hadn't had in a long time. And then the band rolls up, and they came up to me and said, are you coming to church tonight? And to be honest with you, every time I was in church, I couldn't sit there. I would be shaking. If you watch me, I shake a lot. But I would walk up to the chaplain and go, I gotta go, I got diarrhea, I'm not feeling, and I was lying to not be there. And, and he said, are you coming to church tonight? And I was a leader of a group, and we had a close time frames, and I said, no, dude, I can't, I gotta run a group. And he kind of left it at that. And then he asked me again, and I said, hey, dude, I told you, I'm running a group. And, that's what it was, and he left. And I carried on with my day. I got 5 minutes, I gotta hustle. Anyway, that band's PA didn't work, and they came and called me. I went, fixed it. Then I'm standing in a church without knowing I'm standing in a church. I'm listening to music, and I go, wow, these guys are good. And that was the beginning of a journey. My first time I went to church, the first Bible ever I got, and I didn't understand the King James Version. It was like speaking anything to me. She gave me a Bible for dummies, is what I called it, but I could understand it. That night, she said, don't read much, read John. I read John, and I couldn't stop reading. I read The Purpose-Driven Life the next day, and I started asking questions. And then one morning I got up, and I don't sleep well, and I never have. I went out and I was in nature about 4 in the morning, sun come up, and I said, you know what, I gotta give this God crap a chance. And then that night, I got rest. I got one of those sleeps that you go to bed at like 9 o'clock, I do not move an inch, and I slept till 9 o'clock the next day. The sheets weren't even messed, you know that sleep? And to me, I'll never forget it, because I finally had some peace. And it was, my life got exponentially better. I wrote a song the night before I went to bed. I gave it to the guy that was playing guitar, and he had music. It just fit so well. We wrote 5 songs there. Some people, unbeknownst to me, showed up from UBC to record it. We made a 5 CD song CD. One song became the graduation song for all the treatment centers in Lower Mainland. One made it to global news as an outro to commercial, and then, you know, I was getting that spark back. And then I phoned my mom that night I went to church. The first time I said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. I went to church. My mom said to me, I did too. And her neighbors took her to the Sanders Baptist Church over here. And my mom knows me and music. And she said to me, Gordo, I went to this church and the drummer was so loud. You'll like it. And my mom was trying to hook me, get me to come with her. And I said, Mom, when I come home, we'll go to church. Now, I got about 7 years with my mom sober and going to church every day. And in that 7 years, my life got exponentially better. Everything came in. To like my family came back. And I heard these things. God won't, nothing is done for waste. He'll turn it into good. And in my life, he has. I believe it with wholeheartedly. But there was still some stuff missing. And about 5 years in, I slipped on drugs again. I decided to drive the bus, but there was a curve and I didn't make it, and I crashed. And I crashed really quickly, which was good, because I knew I needed to go back to what I was doing with God. And it just you need God. Take this road, Gord. Don't do nothing else. And because the only thing I get done, like Greg said, I could ruin my life. And it got better and better and better. And then I met a woman who wanted me to do something. She said on her birthday, I want to go out and give homeless people cookies and socks. And I go, are you nuts? And she said, no, I want to. And I thought about it, and I know the streets. I was on these streets here for years, 35 years I was out here. And I said, I'll go with you. I know the streets, you'll be safe. And we went out, and it started a relationship. She's not my wife, she's Julia, she's sitting right there. But she planted a seed to help people, and we started doing cookies, and it snowballed. I just had more, I didn't know what it was, but I felt, I want to feed people when no one will do it, and at middle of the night, I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to have a barbecue, and like, that sounded really stupid, no one's going to believe that, and I didn't know what would happen, but a pastor had faith in me. He said, tell my church what you want to do, and I did. And I never would ever say, hey, I need your money. Well, when I left that church today, I was blown away. There was $17,000 in cash. I had a brand new trailer. I mean, I guess I'm doing this now. There's nothing I could do, right? Well, that was 4 years ago. 65,000 hamburgers later. Endless guys to treat, not endless, but people at treatment centers, people, someone to talk to. We baptize people down in the street, and it just keeps going and going and going. And my life today is fantastic. I don't have I understand the meaning of the word enough, and I understand how, and we now have this ministry downtown that God's taken a guy that was an addict, and he's now administering to people in that condition. And I don't like to call anybody addict, but we all have struggles. And he did exactly what he said. He'll take anything bad and use it for that good. And none of the stuff I went through, even though it's emotional, it's worth it. It's worth every minute of that journey. And I you know, if you're struggling out there, give God a shot. You know, what else you got to lose? It's your life. You know, and all I can tell you in my life is it was ruined. He rebuilt it in a fashion I would never have dreamed. My friends from 20 years ago, you what? You work in a church? Not you. But you do ministry? Not you. And no, nothing lined up with what I thought. You know, but I found the peace in my heart. I found a woman I can love. I found a family right here at this place that I can play music with and enjoy. And I never thought I'd have that. That's my story.
Julia, would you come down here? I'd like to pray for both of you. The worship team can come now as well. Let's pray together. Lord, when we hear of your work in Gordo's life and in Julia's life, I look to the heavens and say, amazing grace, this undeserved favor that's been poured out, Lord, on Gordo's life and on Julia's life. We're so grateful for what you've done in each of them. And how, Lord, you can take our mess and make something incredibly beautiful out of it. Lord, thank you for these trophies of grace. It's our heart's cry that you would continue to meld and mend them together, and that you would continue to use them in kingdom work. What a privilege, Lord. We love you, Jesus, and we love them, and we ask that you would bless them in your strong name. And everybody said, amen.